mistakes. Without them we wouldn't be here. Let's hear it for inexactitude, for imprecision, bravo, for fudging and if you're three cheers. If that new mutation hits an egg or seed, which managed to combine together and then lead to one new fungus, plant or beast, that babe will be a little different at least. That mutation will probably reduce our new.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of What We Should Know, coming to you from Cambridge Community Television.
Is that the name of the show? What We Should Know?
What We Should Know.
I didn't know that.
Paul Stephen is guest with us today. Paul has been here a number of times. We're very thankful and happy to have you here again.
Just scrunching into the seat.
You've written, you have a blog, a successful one?
I do. It's pretty much kind of dormant at the moment. I've just been working on these ads for Bernie. So I've just been, at the moment, kind of, it's quiescent. So, and I'm also going through selling a house and moving a household of furniture and all this other great stuff. So.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah.
You had a full program.
Yes. And I've had this terrible, I think it's allergies. I've just been knocked on my ass for a week, more actually.
Sorry to hear it.
Me too, but I'm back.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, what would you like to talk about? I mean, there's so much going on in your personal life. We could probably spend some time there. And many individuals in the United States are going through similar issues, selling a house, having to sell a house, health issues, moving furniture, etc.
Well, and the thing that I'm going through probably most dramatically is learning to live as an older person. I'll be 70 in 2 months, and
congratulations.
Thank you. The body just has limits to what it can do and what it wants to do, and it's part of life at this point in your development is to learn what those limits are. And it's been a little bit deflating, I think, but it's an exciting time. Lots of change. Cambridge is changing, and I love Cambridge, but I'm very comfortable moving on. I'm basically a 3 or 4 block walk from Central Square.
Really?
So I've had it really great for all these years. Yeah.
That's terrific.
And the people who are buying our condo will have that beautiful arrangement. And I'll have to tell them about the Mariposa Mariposa Bakery, which I heartily endorse. They have a great set of people working there, great crew. But I don't know, the thing that's most on my mind these days is Bernie and Hillary, I have to be honest. So we could talk about that. We could show my latest Bernie ad.
Let's do that. That's it, ladies and gentlemen.
So I will read it. Ever onward we march, stronger for all the lies, the stolen or suppressed votes, the oligarch-controlled media, the shifting political positions, the hollow promises, the cascade of scandals, the stolen primaries, and the utter contempt in which we are held by Hillary and her puppeteers. Ever onward we march, undaunted by false claims of victory, a totally biased DNC, or by the entreaties of those who hunger for a female president. Ever onward we march, though CNN, NBC, ABC, The Washington Post, and the New York Times publish our obituary, never mentioning Bernie's chances are better now than Obama's were in 2008. Ever onward we march, because we are fighting for the future of our children, our grandchildren, and yes, our planet. Hillary can suppress our votes, but she can't stop the forces of history. Ever onward, certain in the rightness of our leader and our cause, marches the army of Bernie Sanders. Well, I felt the need to, everybody is, I have 2 cousins that are avid Hillary supporters, and they've been on my case since this whole thing started. And, they just jumped on me the minute the New York thievery was, the results of the New York thievery were announced. And, I I was so angry that, that they're trying to get him to jump out of the race so that she can, deal with the general election, as though she's already got it in the bag, and she thinks she has it in the bag. And I'm just hoping that Rhode Island and Pennsylvania and Maryland and whoever else votes tomorrow give her a good, middle finger up her nose. But I don't know what kind of skullduggery is in motion. This has been the most dishonest election since Bush's presidential elections. This
2001 or 2004?
Bush? 2000
or 2004?
Both.
Both of them.
He stole them in both cases. The first case he had aided and abetted by the Supreme Court, but the second case it was just Ohio.
Was Scalia on the Supreme Court then?
Of course. Scalia and Thomas both. People have said they should have recused themselves. I'm not quite sure why, but they never would recuse themselves, no matter how involved they were with any of the participants of anything. So it's very frustrating for a lot of us to watch what's happening. It's like watching somebody you care about getting beaten up. It's just so undemocratic. This country absolutely fools itself thinking it's the defender of democracy for the world. And it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. A Republican Party that can't sustain itself without stopping people from voting doesn't deserve to exist. And they're doing anything they can to keep the vote down, keep poor people and blacks and anybody that wouldn't necessarily vote for them, Latinos, keep them from voting. That's the best strategy, rather than doing something to help the country. So we live in a very strange period of time where stealing an election is almost so common that the media doesn't even report on it. I was struck by, I'm just going on and on here, but
no, please go
Jim
ahead.
Browdy on...
I'll jump in, believe me, it's
okay, good.
Paul, it's terrific.
Jim Browdy, who's a Cambridge boy, who has a radio show on GBH
It's good.
radio. It is good, it's very good. But the day after the New York primary, with so many obvious instances of the damn thing being stolen, there's not even a mention of that. That they're only talking about whether Bernie should continue, to beat that donkey, mercilessly. And so I don't know why they got their head in the sand, because they're not part of the corporate media thing. But GBH has also been very strong behind Hillary, and I think that goes up to the higher levels of connection. Hillary and Bill are so well connected with all the corporate media folks, with all the corporate execs. Basically the people that think they own the country now. And they do own the country now. So we got to take it back. And I read something, I posted this piece on my LinkedIn page. And I got a great response from a fellow I know who lives in England. And he talked about Bernie being the future of the party, and that the party knows it, the public knows it, everybody knows it. This is what the future has to be. If there is a future for the Democratic Party, it has to be Bernie Sanders, or Bernie Sanders' philosophical point of view. But it's hard to keep that in mind as you're living through it. And you're watching polling stations get closed down when there's twice as many people to vote and stuff like that.
While standing out there waiting to vote.
Yeah, Rhode Island, good old Rhode Island, they're closing down 2/3 of their polling stations for tomorrow's primary. I'm not quite sure what's that about, other than, how do they excuse that? Trying to save money, doing what they're supposed to do. It's sort of like saying you can't afford to put dough into making a loaf of bread. I mean, that's what they're there for. They exist.
That's a nice analogy.
They exist to do that.
That's their job.
Exactly. But no, close 2/3 of the polling stations and go home for the day. Give us a call in the morning.
So, I agree, I concur. The question to my mind is, what can be done? What can the people of Rhode Island, or the people of Massachusetts, or the people of Maryland, Pennsylvania. What can people actually do to change this impetus, to change a system that's obviously in collapse?
Well, if you leave it in the hands of the states, there's very little. Once they took the Voting Rights Act away, essentially they clipped its balls off. Once they did that, they made it so that a lot of states that ordinarily had a history of fooling around with the vote could do it once again. And Arizona is a good example. They did it immediately. No, I think the elections have to be somehow protected and staged on a national level. Certainly important stuff like this. And not surprisingly, the laws are slow to react because these are politicians. They don't want to govern themselves. But, I think I mentioned last time I was here, I called the Secretary of State's office, or I emailed them, to complain about Bill Clinton's stuff and about other irregularities in the Massachusetts vote. Do you know the Massachusetts vote was stolen, folks? I mean, some votes were stolen, certainly enough to make sure that Hillary got a win, squeaked by a win. So we live in a state that was absolutely, hosed by Hillary and the gang. But I found it particularly upsetting that Clinton goes with a bullhorn to the voting polls, stops all the activity, and goes in and makes everybody feel like, oh my God, the President of the United States has shook my hand or said hi to me or all. He's very charming, except if you're an attractive woman caught alone with him in a hotel room, he won't be so charming. But that's another thing. He's accused of a couple of rapes.
Right.
You knew that?
Right.
I didn't know that. That's just recently found out. I know some of the stuff has been pushing his favors unwantedly upon women, but I never knew it was to that extent, at least alleged extent. So what can we do? I don't know. I think that's part of this revolution. You got to have somebody at the top that isn't somehow in the tank with everybody else. You need somebody like Bernie who wants publicly financed elections, not surprisingly. If they were publicly financed elections, there'd be no point in having corruption. Who could corrupt it? Maybe somebody wants to go to the old way and give them a bag of money, but other than that, there's no more corrupt politicians, no more corrupt politics.
How would that actually look? Let's just consider that, what publicly financed elections would look like. It would eliminate contributions to the candidates legally. Mm-hmm. It would place every candidate on the same financial basis and rules, Republican or Democrat. Would the parties agree to that in any way?
They don't want to have their ability to play whatever game they play hampered by restrictions. Massachusetts voted in clean elections. Finneran, who was very powerful at that time, managed to keep the whole thing basically dead in the water till he got enough votes to kill it. I mean, he was forced to fund it that first year by the judges, by the court. But essentially, he started threatening to take back. That's the problem. The legislature here funds the courts, funds the executive branch. So it was a very, if he deserves to go to jail for that, if nothing else, in my mind. But what it would look like is, there'd be a certain amount of money that you would get if you qualified with enough signatures. Back then, I was volunteering for Jill Stein's campaign that first year of the public elections.
From the Green Party, was she?
She was, and it was very hard to work with the Green Party because everything has to be by consensus. So you don't really make any decision that has a good chance of sticking. And when I deal with, I never could have gotten an ad like that past a committee. As soon as you have a committee voting on stuff, everybody wants to put in their 2 cents and to seem smarter than the next guy. And it's so easy to tear down an advertising idea, especially if it's provocative.
You consider that your ad to be provocative?
It's provocative because I'm, making accusations. So that's certainly provocative. I mean, it's, probably I should have a half dozen alleged violations or alleged theft or whatever, but
I think it's potent that way, and I don't think you actually need alleged. If anybody were to come at you, basically with a defamation suit, I think you would have no problem whatsoever defending yourself.
good. I'll call on you if I ever find
Well,
myself.
that's basically the next question. The question I'd be interested in looking at.
Go to number 33 on that if you can.
Great, I can do that.
That's the one where I really felt a little bit exposed, I have to say.
I'll be able to, so this
This is
one was
39, so just go up 6.
38, 37, 36. Be this one.
I sent this one out again today. Is that, will Hillary be allowed?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, is it? No, I'm sorry. I think I gave you, go back to that list. And one before this, that's 33. That's it. This is the one that I got whelps and yowls and screams of protest for my cousins.
Will Hillary be allowed to continue to steal votes in primary, after primary, caucus, after caucus? Nothing is bold,
This
illegal.
bold.
Nothing this bold, thank you, illegal or arrogant has been seen since George W. Bush stole the presidency from Al Gore and then John Kerry. Nor has the media been so similarly disinterested or blind to such crimes. JusticeGazette.org question, has Hillary actually won anything, ? In its article, The Stealing of the 2016 Election. The list of election crimes grows too long to ignore, starting with Bill and Hillary illegally electioneering, I like that term, electioneering, at polling stations on election day, to which you can add fraudulent miscounting of caucus votes, obstruction of Sanders votes, mass disenfranchisement of eligible 17-year-old voters, and the sudden shortage of ballots in 2 southern states. The list of crimes seems to build daily, as does the apparent desperation of Hillary and Bill, who must have asked themselves, do we really want the presidency bad enough to steal a nomination? Clearly, their answer was yes.
Yeah. This is the first ad where I came out and talked about them stealing. I mean, Iowa, there was some rumblings in Iowa. People had videos to show that whoever was counting the caucus voters wasn't counting Bernie voters, and they won 6 toss-ups. You know, there's sometimes the winner gets decided by the toss of a coin, and they won 6 in a row. Bernie won none. That kind of stuff. So that was the one where I probably should have had more alleges, but that's okay. It's really disheartening, and you know that's just a partial list. It really is. The New York thing, where 125,000 Brooklyn voters were purged from the rolls, and it's pretty easy to sort of pick out Bernie supporters because all the new.
Well, they're young.
They're young. They're new to the polls because they're being drawn to this whole political process anew. And in Arizona, 4,000 Bernie supporters were supposedly had their registrations changed. That's another thing. This whole business of somebody going in and hacking into the system of the electoral.
Who would have interest in doing that? Who would have a motive? This is basically the question.
You need DNC. You need DNC files to do it to be successful. You can't do it without having the information. Who are the people on the rolls? Who recently joined up? How old are they? And changing their name, their registration, their party affiliations, which basically disallows any voting in the right election. I mean, there was one woman who was talking about her New York thing, and she protested and she asked for an what do they call them?
Affidavit?
Was it affidavit? There was some form that you weren't even sure that they would count it, but they gave it to you to vote, and they gave her the Republican one, and she went, I don't want to vote for any of these people, and the people laughed at her. But the whole thing is so cynical. These people have to know what they're doing. They're blaming one woman for this whole business of the voter purge. And there were other places in New York State where this happened. But if you look at a map of New York State, Bernie won the entire state except for New York City.
Oh,
Yeah, you look at the blue, they had a blue-green kind of map set up, and it was all green. It was all Bernie, really light blue. Versus
how about that?
Yeah, very telling. Because New York City has the highest concentration of voters. But I don't know. I'm becoming an expert in something that I absolutely detest. So it's very disheartening. I keep saying.
It is disheartening, but something you mentioned rang true in reference to who could be held responsible. And the indictment of 3 members of the Flint, Michigan Water Department concerning the scandal of the lead in Flint, Michigan's water. Where the governor and his adjutants over a period of a year had manipulated the decision-making in reference to how money was to be saved in Flint, Michigan. And the decision this week to have 3 local representatives of the water department, apparently, or the local
really?
city government.
I saw a headline, I didn't get a chance to read it, that the governor, Snyder, was one of the people that was being, I don't know if indicted is the right word, but certainly brought to...
I don't believe that's the case, but Snyder is the one definitely who should be indicted in this because of the consequence. It's clear that the political ideas behind a decision-making process of this level would have to be cleared by the governor's office.
Well, they appointed a receiver to take charge of the town. And once that was in place, the whole thing was going to be governed by a Republican point of view. So whether the governor was involved with it beforehand or just after, I have no idea. But he should be brought to court to answer for his negligence, if not crimes.
Don't they have something in place, Paul, where a non-judicial committee comes together to investigate something, to determine who would have a motive, who would have the decision-making power? A grand jury, isn't that what they call it? But it's only in criminal...
Grand juries for criminal cases.
Would a grand jury be
It could be. If you have, what happens, as I understand it, grand jury is set up and sits for a certain period of time, and they meet on a weekly basis. And a prosecutor or district attorney or a federal attorney brings a case to them, presents the information, evidence, and they supposedly decide whether or not to prosecute or indict. And very often, grand juries are under the thumb of the prosecutor. And they're being, there are a lot of questions that really only prosecutor, somebody versed in the law could answer, so. But I would love to see a grand jury run wild on that whole thing, just a runaway grand jury, which has happened, but not very often and not very recently. But that would be wonderful.
I agree. I think just to stay in the question of indictments and grand jury, it looks as though the anniversary of Freddie Gray's killing a year ago in Baltimore is led to some further description. Apparently, he died of a broken neck. I had heard that he had injury to his spinal column. That's what I had heard, but the information is in a recent broadcast that Freddie Gray died of a broken neck while in police custody.
Who was the young man that was shot 16 times? Was that Freddie Gray, or was that?
No, Freddie Gray was died in police custody, but someone shot 16 times. That was another case of course, and I believe that no one is currently under investigation. I believe that the police officer that did that shooting was temporarily suspended from his position, but I believe no further consequences as far as a grand jury or so have been taken in reference to that case. But it leads us to the idea of Black Lives Matter, of course, and the immense amount of distrust on a national level that young blacks are bringing to the idea of having their peers shot by police officers in conditions or under conditions in which they obviously had no weapon available. Although this has been going on, I've heard on a regular basis that 3,000 or so blacks are killed every year in the United States being shot by police.
Wow.
3,000, that's what I have
scary.
heard.
Very
And
scary.
that this has been going on, this is not a new statistic of this last year, but this has been going on for more than a decade, these numbers. And there are no statistics, there's no obligation under the states to count the number of fatalities to individuals shot by police. There's no obligation that any police department has in the state, any state in the United States, to enumerate the conditions of this. What I would like to say something, and Paul, I hope you can bear with me for a second. It's just being the crisis, I believe, that I see taking place in the United States is not so much the idea that there are, as Hillary Clinton mentioned, there are too many guns in the United States. That's, I believe she said this 2 days ago. We don't need that many guns. My position in reference to this, and I'm not going out on a limb because I feel very comfortable about this position, the idea of restricting guns in the United States when the police kill 3,000 individuals a year under circumstances that are completely non-transparent, that are not recorded anywhere, that there is no concept in place to have on a regular basis when a death of a individual takes place at the hands of the police, that there is automatically a process in which this is investigated by the county or through the state, but implemented by the county, and then the results are then checked by prosecuting attorneys. Without something like this being in place, this entire idea of the killing of blacks in the United States under conditions in which peace basically is the order of the day is off the charts, not to be accepted. Because at a time in which a civil unrest were to grip the United States, at a time in which that were to happen, under present circumstances, there could be tens of thousands of killings taking place without any responsibility whatsoever, without any process. And the courts would be overwhelmed, the individuals would be overwhelmed.
Well, you know, this is, all this, if you really step back from it, it's not necessarily racial prejudice. It's just authoritarian rule. The fact that you've got such disparity between the wealthy and the poor creates this lower level of, this lower level population that's just, they have no jobs, they have no money, and they're gonna get out of hand periodically. And so and the police are an instrument of the society, and the society is an authoritarian, anyway, you know what I mean.
I do.
And so it goes right back to that disparity of income issue, and having so much in the hands of so few and having so little in the hands of so many. And if we don't wake up to this, at some point there's going to be a revolution, not just a political revolution, because people are starting to see now what's happening. You know, we talked about the chicken cooking slowly in the pot and realizing that it was getting hot. People are starting to realize it's getting very hot because they can't afford to send their kids to college. When I went to school, I went to BU, it was $3,000
It's a good school.
semester. Yeah, and I got a good education. Joined a fraternity to make sure that it was a full and rich experience.
Can we talk about that? No. Can we talk about your experience in fraternity?
No, I was never a student, so I needed more than just the classes and the study. You know, BU was a good school, but you know there was only a few classes that ever really sparked my imagination, except for when I went into the advertising program at School of Journalism. But most of the classes didn't stir me. There was one I had on cosmic consciousness that was really fascinating, and I didn't realize it then, but I had a burgeoning interest in spirituality.
Did you really?
Yeah, which later on, you know, erupted into full bloom, and now the petals have faded and fallen off. But I was a spiritual seeker for many years.
No kidding.
Yeah, I still am in my own way, but you know, the fire has been turned down significantly.
I just wanted to say it's not a question that I find that unusual by asking if that's truly the case, because you're you're a journalist and you're focused on journalism, and probably have been focused on journalism because you've earned your livelihood very successfully in that way. How does spirituality intersect with journalism?
Well, I don't want to correct you, but I see myself as a writer. Sometimes I'll write something that has a journalistic slant, or I'll write something that has a investigative slant, or if you read a lot of my blog postings, especially the ones about Cambridge, I can put to voice what's happening in a pretty easily comprehended way. And so if you're searching for the spiritual basis of things, you're really looking for what's happening, because the spiritual world is hidden from our eyes. It's like an iceberg. We see 10% of it, if at all. You know, the fact that there are people moving from one lifetime into another lifetime, you know, reincarnation or anything like that. If it's happening, nobody's seeing it. And nobody, you know, parts of the world, Hindus believe that's true, but in our society, we don't believe it's true. So the spiritual world is something that exists, but isn't necessarily easily seen. So I must have had this curiosity since I was very young, and I just needed a certain number of circumstances to come into play before it would activate itself. And then you start the search. You know, I belong to a Unitarian church in Hingham, and we had a service just last week because it's the festival of Hanuman, which is one of the Hindu gods. And I just loved it. I just soaked it in. It's just wonderful stuff. Hindus really are onto something, I believe. No, I had, if you read my novel, or so it seems, it's a story about one man's spiritual quest in a very earthbound world. But, you know, we're all on a spiritual odyssey, just most of us don't know it. So sometimes we wake up to it, and sometimes we never wake up to it.
Paul Stephen Stone, thanks for being here, and I hope you'll spend the next 30 minutes here with us.
Sure. No, I'm having a ball. Love talking.
It's very kind of you to come by. We are questioning at the moment here at What We Should Know, what the intersection is between spirituality and journalism. Did I get that wrong again?
No, I mean, that's part of the discussion. The journalist, and what's not happening with journalism with Bernie, is the journalists are, for whatever reason, purposely looking the other way, because there's a narrative that they would have to tell that doesn't fit in with the people who own, whatever medium they're working in. So, but ordinarily a journalist is somebody that's searching for the truth. And so it's not such a far afield connection. I think the whole media is going to be shaken up by the realization that, because I'm going to cancel my Globe subscription. No, I'm just
Good,
tired.
well done.
I'm tired of their ignoring what's happening. I mean, they report on an election result. They don't even tell you the percentage that Bernie won. What kind of reporting is that? It's just criminal. And that rally in New York where he had 48,000 people, according to the New York Police Department.
Amazing.
It never made the news. It wasn't important. It was the biggest political rally in history. It never made the news. And the Globe could care less.
48,000 people.
Yeah. Bernie's group estimated at 27,000. But outside of Washington Square, the crowd went back for miles. Just went back and back and back. And the police said it was 48,000, according to their estimate. I don't know how you estimate a crowd like that, but and for the Globe to miss it and to not report on it, and for most of the newspapers to not report on it, is criminal. It's criminal because if you're trying to figure out what you believe and what you think, is it possibly helpful to know what other people believe and think? It's just amazing.
That's interesting. Yeah, it comes down to the idea of stop not looking at our cell phones and start talking to one another. I think, is that what you're advocating? Something as radical as that?
No, I would never advocate that. But I would say that your cell phone is probably going to be a better source of information and news than the Boston Globe.
Really?
Or even the New York Times. The New York Times is shockingly pro-Hillary. They came out with this kind of a scathing indictment of her the day after the primary for some of her bullshit. So that they said it, but they wouldn't say it at a point where it might influence voters. That's just pretty pathetic. So.
And they forget what they said the next day.
Right. No, it's for somebody that cares about the state of the world. It's a really sort of a dismal situation. But Bernie came along. The other thing that you have to realize is that the fact that Bernie came along and had this instantaneous reaction on the part of the population says two things. One, that the country is ready for this political revolution. And the other thing is that there's something in the works that's feeding that. So there's pressure building and things are going to happen. And the population is ready for that to happen. So whether the news media wants to admit it or not. So it's interesting. It's the other thing that I would point out, and I'm fascinated by this. People who try to control situations, this must be a universal law. People who try to control situations invariably create the situations they were trying to prevent.
Really?
Yes. It's just like sending out a troop of police officers to quell a riot and end up creating a riot. It's just that kind of thing. A riot that didn't exist suddenly exists. That's just been my observation. When somebody is a controlling type of person, they end up creating the situations they're trying to prevent. So that makes me hopeful that maybe Hillary will get her comeuppance. See. And there's always the FBI, so don't lose hope. There's always the FBI.
When you say there's always the FBI, what do you mean by that?
Find my indicted, the one where I said Hillary was in danger of being indicted
So
as the world's worst. I don't remember what. I'm going to take it one at a time going down there. No. No, keep going. I'll see it and I'll tell you when you get there.
Can you read that?
Oh, no, I can't. That's it. I'll read this one.
Thank you.
I need to get rid of those bags under my eyes.
Very attractive.
So, I'll read the headline first. What if Hillary is indicted for being the worst possible candidate? And I know there's an illogic in that. What if Hillary is indicted for being too cavalier with national security while Secretary of State? Her negligence in setting up her own server for all her emails was not normal behavior, as she claims, but a total disregard of established protocols and vital security concerns. She poo-poos the whole thing. It's just they reclassified this stuff afterwards. It's total bullshit. So, with Hillary, the Democratic Party will always be listening for the other shoe to drop. Hers and Bill's entire political careers have been studded with episodes of scandalous behavior and legally questionable self-enrichment. What if the FBI indicts her during her run for president? Or someone leaks a video of her Goldman Sachs speeches? Or we learn that China hacked her emails? Or Bill is caught in another sexual escapade? With Hillary, there's always some next scandal to worry about. Bernie won't say it, but is there any doubt that Hillary is the worst possible candidate? You got one of two political parties in a country that's pushing one person who at the moment is under FBI investigation. Is that crazy? I mean, is that nuts?
That's absolutely crazy.
I mean, they would rip the person off the debate stage if it was anybody but Hillary or Bill.
Physically.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyhow. And if you want to see the rest of these ads, folks, go to paulstonesthrow.com, which is usually, that's not the URL for the series, but that's actually where you'll find it, because I've just been working on these ads. I haven't added new ones.
You're no longer in the
I know. That's
camera.
me. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
That's my expertise as a on-camera personality.
You're doing terrific. Thanks so much for coming. So the idea that a presidential candidate could be under investigation by the FBI and still be as self-absorbed, as flagrant in the violation of voter and election laws, of disregarding the common decency and ideas of plurality connected with an election. Do you see that as being a product of her disregard for political correctness?
I don't think she cares about political correctness. I think she cares about political appearance. Two different things entirely. But having said that, she and Bill have been able to wiggle out of very tight places, and they don't seem to get caught or stopped. I mean, this whole business with her Secretary of State decisions about countries getting help or being able to buy arms. Saudi Arabia bought a ton of arms with Hillary as Secretary of State, and all these things that get approved. That uranium deal I was talking to you about.
Oh, would it be possible for you to mention that in some detail? That's
okay.
Very interesting.
There's part of what's happening with Hillary's emails, and my curiosity is whether some of these deals that she made as Secretary of State will start to emerge, because there was not a obvious quid pro quo in terms of getting money for something, but what appears to be the pattern, she was involved in a number of situations where foreign states wanted certain situations to go in a certain direction. And coincidentally, somewhere either before or at the same time or after, Bill would go on a speaking engagement in these places and get paid $500,000 or more. Russia, there's a company in Russia that paid him $500,000 to come speak there. And I believe it was soon after Hillary approved the Russian purchase of a uranium company that had control of the majority of uranium assets in the United States. They couldn't have sold it without it getting the State Department's approval. And he got $500,000. Now, is that quid pro quo, or is that a great speech? I guess you have to make up your own mind, but there are a number of these situations out there. If they are able to have get broken into her server that she wiped clean, or if those emails are on a cloud and they gain access to them, she may be suffering from a much different indictment than just security negligence. So time will tell.
Agreed.
The thing is, the more you read about the Clintons, the more you feel sullied.
What do you mean by sullied?
It's like hanging around with bad people.
Oh,
They're just
implicated.
not implicated. It's just sort of like you don't want to be with these people.
You feel sullied.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. They are so devious, Machiavellian, and so self-interested. You know, I love Bill Clinton. I went to the inaugural ball in Washington, the Arkansas ball.
Terrific.
Yes. I was a friend of Bill's, so I was an FOB. FOBs were big at the time, friends of Bill.
Huh.
So I
That's
went to the
1990, 1992, 86, something like that we know?
now you're asking. I hate dates. When was his first term?
I have no idea. I could look it up.
Well, he finished up in 2000, so it was probably 2002. I'm not talking about 2000. 1992, maybe? Would that seem right?
No. It seemed, as governor of Arkansas.
No, he went from governor to president.
Right, in 1992, right.
So that's when the ball would have been.
Great. We've got it, 1992. There's so much, my feeling, Paul, and maybe you could comment on this. My feeling is that there is so much in corruption, so many scandals, so much injustice presently in the United States. And Sanders speaks to much of this in one of his speeches or the other, highlighting this reality, all of which are part of his political platform. Sanders speaks truth to power, but it seems as though the political pundits are saying that there's an equality between the truth that Sanders is speaking and the truth that Trump is speaking. And I believe you have a position on this.
Yeah.
Would you be kind enough to
Sure.
mention?
No, I believe that the American populace is starved for somebody to speak truthfully to them. You know, I like Obama in a lot of ways, but he's still a politician. He's still framing things in certain ways. And I think with Bernie and with Trump, there was a sense of authenticity. With Trump, Trump says whatever's on his mind. He's done it, I think, most of his adult life. And because he gets away with it, he's a big bully type character. He's larger than life. He lives a large life. But he also has no time to think about anything. He doesn't spend any time being thoughtful. So whatever he thinks in the moment is what he thinks is true. And that could change 2 minutes later or 2 hours later. So I think at the same time, and people are hearing, people that he's appealing to are also, they're anti-immigrant, they're feeling, they're also oppressed. And quite honestly, they're undereducated and very belligerent. And Bernie is appealing to, people like us, because we're starved for somebody telling the truth, and we're starved for somebody that's going to say, this is the reality, this is the world that I see. You can call it whatever you want, but the truth of the matter is this 90% segment of this culture is getting screwed, is getting, just absolutely reamed by the ruling class. And it's the truth. And I don't think I need a revolution necessarily to change it, but it may take a revolution. Because I'm not a violent person at all. That's not my
You
style.
work with the pen, but wouldn't you say that the pen is mightier than the sword? I mean, isn't that the case? Aren't you
At times.
advocating change through that and demanding change?
Well, I've been speaking truth to power all my life, and it takes a lot of energy. It wears you down. And most of the time you don't see an immediate reaction or a response. I called for city council who voted on that thing.
Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Cambridge, Massachusetts. I called for them to resign if they wouldn't recuse themselves, voting on a project that they had been given, from which they had been given money by the developer. It just struck me as an obvious conflict of interest. And there's a lot of things like that that go on, and you can speak against them, but it doesn't change them. And after a while, you get tired of being, town scold. So I've always tried to wrap my work in humor as a way of taking that edge off of it, but I haven't felt very humorous lately. But the pen can be mighty at the sword. I think that piece that I wrote, Ever Onward, was really meant to, buck up people's spirits and my own. It's not an easy task trying to change the course of an entire society. It's not an easy. He's taken on a big challenge.
Sanders
has, yes. I give him immense credit. He's just an amazing guy. He really is.
So you went to the same university as another amazing individual who did change the course of American history. You went to BU.
I did.
Martin Luther King graduated
right.
from there.
That's right.
As far as the spirituality is concerned, both of you spiritual people, graduated from the same university. Did you feel his spirit? Did you feel the burn, so to speak? When
Can't say that I did. Can't say that I did.
Really?
Not that I was aware of. Back then, they had a monument to him in the courtyard in front of the chapel.
It's since disappeared.
Is it disappeared?
I believe so.
It was an ugly thing. It was all rusty, and it had a lot of birds in it, some sort of metal.
So it wasn't
sculpture.
it wasn't bronzed. It was.
Well, it was some sculptor who worked in metal did some sort of
Abstract. I see.
piece.
So just to take the responsibility for my statements, it may be the case that a statue like that exists on the campus of BU near the chapel, but I've walked around the chapel and I've been there several times.
You wouldn't know that it was a Martin Luther King memorial unless you stopped and read the plaque on it. So.
But then again, it's my experience with universities in Boston, and particularly BU, that I visit regularly in some capacity, that it's very difficult to get in touch with student groups calling the university and asking to speak to a student group. Mm-hmm. It's like trying to get a security clearance from the NSA to do an investigation of the FBI. It seems that when I make those calls, and I've made them several times, just to see if it's possible to be in touch with student organizations. And the reason why that's interesting to me to be in touch with students' organizations is because I believe that students on university campuses in the United States should be allowed to build political organizations on campus that represent their interests as students, without being affiliated with fraternity. I believe that that's the case, and I believe it should be possible, and I believe there should be some autonomy. And it's been my experience in places I've lived that there are no, it's been my experience in places I've lived that there are no organized police groups on campuses of higher education, that the police don't have a police station on campus.
Oh, really? BU, MIT, and Harvard do, yeah.
All of them. So it's my contention that every university with more than 35,000 students has an organized police force and private security on the university.
Sure.
So here's the problem with that. Let me explain to you what I see as an old man with this reality. The problem I see is it's not possible for students to build an idea of political organization and to discover what peers are thinking politically in a environment, in a university environment, as peer-to-peer, without having this understanding from the university establishment that this would be normal procedure on that university. And the fact that police are on the campus, and police being known for discouraging any activity which could be considered disruptive to the establishment. That's what I see as police function. Local police have one function, I believe, in the United States, local police, and that is to restrict any activity which the police chief, in conjunction with the mayor or city council, which they would consider to be promoting